I will invite.
Okay.
So this is the story. Can I request everyone to come forward a little? So maybe from the last bench to first bench. So that will be the punishment, those who are sitting in the last bench. Please come forward. Please come. First two rows are empty. Sangeeta, please come. Good afternoon to one and all. Welcome to Journal and Seminar Club guest lecture presentation. And today we are here to attend our one of the important guest lecture, which will be presented by Dr. Saujanya. A brief introduction about Dr. Saujanya. Dr. Saujanya is a research associate at the University of Cambridge, and she has a PhD in industrial engineering and information systems. And she is currently working in a very important project, which is called a Mandala Consortium. The project is aimed at transforming urban food system for public and planetary health. It's a big word, planetary health, led by the MRC Epidemiology Unit at Cambridge. And Dr. Saujanya's research interests are supply chain operations, data infrastructure, and digital interventions. And she is going to share all his research experiences and part of the project activities as well. And it will be very interesting to interact with all of our audience. With this brief introduction, I request Dr. Saujanya to start his presentation, please.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much to NN and Dr. Ananthan for organizing this. And I'm very happy to be discussing our research, which is basically based in UK. But I believe that it has so many implications also for Indian context. So before I dive in, just to give you the context on what this presentation is all about, it is based on a research paper that we recently published. And that paper is, we have done it using some content analysis and literature review, because this is the first step in the big field, or let's say interdisciplinary field of public health and food supply chains. Because most of the time, public health has always been a very topic that either doctors or health experts and researchers from nutrition and diet inequalities have been looking into. So this is at least our attempt to merge these two disciplines for a common goal of, like what Dr. Ananthan just mentioned, the project we have. It was funded to, it was the UK government's call to transform not just public health, but also the big word planetary health, because we are trying to now move away from mostly, looking at anthropocentric view of just humans becoming better. So we are looking at a more holistic way of changing the food system. Before I move, I just thought of giving some background to my training and my research. I am not a diet and nutrition expert. However, I have been working in food industry and trying to understand how food is processed, how it's manufactured, and how it travels from the source to the plate. But my background is in mechanical engineering, and I have worked in research labs in Switzerland, in Denmark, and before moving to Cambridge. My PhD was also a collaboration between Denmark and Cambridge. I have learned a lot during this time, and I have learned to work with different disciplines. Therefore, my current project is also very interdisciplinary in nature. And I got a chance to work with a lot of health experts. I come from Department of Engineering, which the name suggests, but particularly there is an institute called Institute for Manufacturing in Cambridge University. So we look at only industrial processes, supply chains with all kinds of technological interventions. So a little bit of context about my project. It's called Mandala. I think the name also derives from our Indian, languages. The idea is that different diverse disciplines come in the form of a consortium to solve the challenges in the food system. And then it's obviously driven by epidemiology. That's the main the department that's driving it, leading it. However, we are supporting in our own way industrial engineers like me and economists, conservation specialists. All of them are part of our project. So our project is based on a case of Birmingham City. I don't know, probably you already know a little bit about Birmingham. The context of the city is it's a very big city in UK, I mean in UK standards, and it is one of the most diverse cities. It has populations and ethnicities from all kinds of backgrounds. There are South Asians, Africans, Caribbean, all kinds of people. So which means people eat very different kinds of foods. And Birmingham is also very socio-economically diverse. So it almost represents like a whole world. The world is also many inequalities in terms of wealth, and diets are very different. So we wanted to take this as a case study to get some findings and generalize it for the whole world. So that was the idea. So also one more interesting fact about Birmingham is that it's also a very city with a heritage of industrial revolution. So it has so many manufacturers, and it has a legacy of a very good like production and factories and this sort of setting. In today's presentation, I would like to focus mostly very specifically on our research piece of work, a recent one that's published. So that would be mainly about the content analysis and trying to understand what kind of interventions we have to choose. That's the main task for us at the early stage of our project, because we are still in the second year of our project. We still have 5 more years to go where we will design and evaluate these interventions. Therefore, I'm going to first start with a very broad context. I believe that you're all familiar with the word food systems. It's massive. It includes everything and everybody. Even we are a part of a food system. It basically is a complex network of people, organizations, processes, and basically everything, because we all eat food. So we are mostly interested in designing solutions that are at a scale of population level. So population intervention, if you see in the slide, on the right side of it, we have a bell curve that suggests that if you create some kind of a solution, it should have an impact in a wider range of population. So that's basically the idea. So we don't want to target very specific people or a specific group of people in the society, but we want the solution to be applicable to wider. So that's the context of my project. So in that context, we chose urban food security as a challenge because urban is like city settings have their own unique problems. And there are a lot of studies which say that by 2050, almost 2/3 of the world population will be in cities. And cities have a lot of inequality, as we know, and most of the food that is grown comes from villages. So there's so much of transportation challenge. And when you basically transport this food material from the villages to cities, you have to do a lot of packaging and this plastic, and there are many negative outcomes from our food system. So the idea is to mitigate them. And the literature suggests that the food insecurity problem is not merely because of lack of production. So basically the farmers are able to produce the food that could be sufficient for feeding the whole world, but a lot of food is getting wasted, and some of the food is not being accessible to a big sect of population because it's not accessible, it's not affordable, and there's also a lot of waste that is the food system is incurring. So waste and all these problems that I have listed in the red text all belong to supply chain problems. So these are all operational problems. So what we are trying to argue here is, so food security problem is predominantly a supply chain problem, meaning we have to really make the process more efficient to put the food. I mean, I'm not denying that there are other kinds of problems in the food system, but if we do want everybody, especially the low income groups, to not go hungry and have nutritious diets, we are trying to say that let's pay some attention to our food supply chains and food industry. So in the urban food security problem, there are two challenges in my team is identifying in our project. We are working on healthy food access. So that's in healthy food access problem, we are saying that food manufacturers have a huge role to play in the way we, like eat food, because even though the fruit and vegetable that we eat are very fresh and we call it a fresh food, there is still a lot of industrial processing that goes into it. Not in a negative way, but even the tomatoes that reach us have to be packed, and these packagings and also these transportation, they all have to undergo certain commercial activities. So that packaging also works in the form of almost like an industry. So what we're trying to say is we don't have much visibility on how the food industry is running its operations. So maybe it's time that health experts or public health researchers join hands with food industry and try and understand where the real problem is. So that's one part of the problem. The other massive problem, which I'm sure you're all aware of, is food waste. Food waste affects everybody. Every country wastes a lot of food. Apparently, 1/3 of the food that's produced is wasted. And there is a very interesting statistic here. If food waste were to be a country, then it would be the third largest emitter after China and United States. So this problem cannot be ignored. It also has so many environmental consequences. Therefore, so now that I have established that there is an industry, food industry problem, so I am trying to only focus in my talk on commercial food systems. There are non-commercial food actors. I am a part of a food system. I eat every day, so I am not a commercial food actor. But the food industry really has to act responsibly, and maybe it's not in their interest to save the world or save the environment, but probably it is, as researchers and as stakeholders, it's our responsibility to probably bring them in the same table. And then when we are discussing these problems of food system, let's not isolate them, because it's basically the policy that government designs is what the industry has to follow at the end of the day. So we might as well work towards a policy change, so the industry is more obliged to transform the food systems. So here is a diagram. We are trying to say that there are two types of interventions. That's the concept. The behavioral side is something where you're trying to change people's behaviors, people's attitudes. We do some advertising and we probably announce that smoking kills, and this is some sort of intervention that's done to change consumer behavior. But there is the other sort of intervention that we have to do from the processing side. Even if the consumer wants a very good change, sometimes food industry might not be accessible to make this change happen. So a recent example from London is, I think you all are aware that UK is going through a lot of economic crisis right now. There is cost of living, there is food poverty everywhere, and a lot of people are not eating healthy, nutritious diets. They are consuming ultra processed foods, and there's obesity, all kinds of problems in the population. So there is one intervention that government came up with that is in London. So like we have the midday meals. London schools also are now getting lunchtime free meals for kids. I think this change happened because they decided that school children are not able to eat healthy food without this. So now they're trying to scale it up for the entire England. So this is again the behavior side. So we have to also look at the back end side of it, which is supply side interventions. So that is what I am going to discuss a little bit on. So the supply chain, I'm sure you are aware, but supply chain has all kinds of actors. They all have to work together to, like send the food from farm to plate. And this includes farmers, manufacturers like Nestle. Nestle is probably a very bad example of, I mean, there are other healthy food suppliers also. I'm not saying, like one company is healthy and one is not, but I'm trying to say even fruit and veg also requires some kind of a food processing. So those and wholesale markets are very important in this chain. They are the central nervous system. They just supply all the important food products in the city, and which are unfortunately disappearing in many big cities, especially in the developed world. So then comes the retailers like Spar, or there are big supermarkets at least in UK. Most of the food that people consume, 80% comes from very big supermarkets. At least in India, we have smaller shops and small hawkers, but that's not the case in developed countries so much. So all these people are equally important in a supply chain. And sometimes these supply chain parties have very competing interests. So a manufacturer might not have any interest in collaborating with a wholesaler and it's not their top priority to really, do anything environmental friendly, because the commercial food system works with the principle of generating profits. We all know that that's what the economy is. So that's why a digital supply chain is not a technology, but it's just the way the supply chain is operated, on how digitally accessible the data is and the visibility one could have on where the product is. Because if I'm buying some tomatoes, I should be able to track where the tomato came from and which place it has been resting and where it's been stored and at what time I purchased it. So at least the container should be tracked. So that gives us some visibility on where the tomatoes are getting wasted. Why is it taking so long why are we spending so much money and energy on refrigeration, for example? So we are trying to say that the more democratic and the more visible the supply chain becomes, the better it is. It's almost like government. The more we know that, the more transparent our governance is, we know where the corruption is or where it is not corrupt or where. So same thought actually. So there are several types of digital supply chains. I won't get so much into detail on that topic because probably it's not something that's very interesting for you, but the supply chain integration is a concept where we say that all the supply chain parties, especially in food, should collaborate and should share data. So we we can track the product and we know the traceability of it. So with that, I want to, also share how we did this research. It's just a systematic research, literature review. We have done it in a very, it's a rapid review. So we have used two different keywords, urban food supply chains and food supply chains. Our idea was not to understand whether or not companies are doing the processes better. Our goal was to understand whether or not these studies in industrial discipline talking about public health, do they even realize that there is a big public health baggage that's associated with food industry? So we wanted to do some inductive and abductive studies, but not really deductive and quantitative modeling and more company centric. And to our surprise, we realized that there aren't many journals that focus on, even though it's such a big problem. Now that I tried to convince you, I believe you understand how big of a problem it is that food industry is so directly responsible for negative outcomes in food supply, food systems. We don't see many journals on that. So there is no clear discipline in this area. However, Nature Food is publishing a lot of papers on food systems, and Journal of Cleaner Production is also publishing more industrial kind of papers. So maybe if you are interested in this field, you could probably take a look at those two sources. So what we did was, I'll quickly go through the content analysis part. We followed some Prisma framework and we tried to segregate the literature into different categories based on the levels. We tried to group them as per problems and then digital solutions and also the approaches. And then coming to the urban food supply chain problems, food waste is a big problem anyways, but out of stock is also a very big problem. Many retailers and many grocery supply chains, they don't want to have empty shelves. So what they do is they either overstock or they understock. There are certain food material, even if I go to the supermarket, I might not get it. So that's a supply problem. So all these things have to be closely monitored. Many a times we might go to supermarket believing that I am going to buy fresh bananas or something, and I don't find them in good quality or I don't find them at all, and I end up buying some dairy milk. I don't know. So that's also some sort of supply problem. It's not just my behavior. Sometimes consumer has no choice. So I feel like it's also government's responsibility to not let oversupply of unhealthy foods or junk foods. And then coming to the digital solutions, there is a big literature stream on blockchains. I think you must have heard about blockchains on cryptocurrency and this context. But there is also a lot of this concept in food supply chains because they think that it also gives clarity on the operations. It gives visibility. All the parties can, it makes it democratic. And then there is already sensing technologies. So there are some sensors that are installed in the warehouses, and we can these days track food from where it is going, what time it is getting shipped, where is the source, and all this. So we group the literature based on this. There are 33 studies we thought are like qualifying what we wanted. So there is some work going on in this field, but it's not directly targeting any like obvious public health problems. There's no like holistic study. And actually industry, surprisingly, tech industry is already very advanced in the way that it's already coming up with a lot of products that are targeted to food industry. Like IBM Food Dust is also a blockchain tool. And then Microsoft is also targeting food industry because they want to sell their products and they want to make the small food businesses also use a lot of digital tools, not just paper-based recording or Excel sheets. So we also have an interest in small businesses recording their business in the form of a digital platform. And I think Deliveroo is, I mean, on the right side, there are some logos. Facebook has been, I'm a big, I mean, I don't consider social media as a very silly platform or anything. I believe that it empowers a lot of small businesses. That's just my personal view, but there are also many studies, proven studies that WhatsApp and Facebook, they have been like marketplaces that have been connecting small farmers directly to the consumers. So we also want that because that, like reduces the supply chain length. And then Deliveroo is like a Swiggy or Zomato equivalent of UK. Gusto, there is a small, it was a small startup, in fact, from Cambridge University. They were from the business school, and it's now a very successful company, one of the biggest in the UK. And what they do is they customize the, I mean, if I'm ordering, for example, if I say biryani, they will just send me all the fresh material that is required for 2 meals. It's all pre-packed. You just have to cut it and you have to follow the recipe and you can cook it. I don't know if it's the best thing or not, but it is better for some countries which are heavily relying on processed food and the countries that are also wasting a lot of food. So this kind of model also supports food waste reduction. So these are some of the examples of digital products, IT support. These are some highlights of some studies from the literature. There are people who've done some work, and most of these work are heavily field-based. So they have done some interviews, they have done like compared some empirical observations. The first example is something where somebody in, I think it's Australia based, so they have it's some kind of a meat business, and then they have a blockchain platform, and they are trying to study how the blockchain platform is helping online payments and data integrity in food supply. And the second study you see is very interesting. It's from Sao Paulo in Brazil. So these authors have studied, have tried to study the food waste reduction solutions. So they have done a lot of data collection. They have compared 10 different food supply chain actors. So some are food manufacturers, farmers, all these people. And they tried to understand how a digital platform, like a common platform, it could be as simple as WhatsApp, or it could be as complicated as IBM's Food Trust or whatever. But there is some sort of information exchange between these parties. They're not completely disconnected. So the moment there is no disconnect, and the moment these supply chain stakeholders are exchanging some amount of data, they have realized that there is a very drastic reduction of food waste. So all we are trying to say is, let's make it more visible. Let's make our food supply chain more traceable, so we all know what is going on in the food industry. And just to sum up, there are many possible digital interventions one could come up with in urban food supply chains. And I mean, these could be based on e-platforms. And one could argue that Swiggy and Zomato are probably not so useful for public health, because they actually encourage people to eat outside of home, right? So that's not really healthy. But if, at least we could use it for supplying healthy food also. Swiggy might not only supply bad food, right? So that's one argument. And then there should be also like web-based platforms, like I just mentioned about one company that's doing customized consumer, recipes. If I say like tomato basil pasta, so they send me only one leaf of basil that's required for the recipe. So I don't have to buy like full branch of basil. So these kind of things. There are logistic systems that are really outdated and people have to upgrade. So we do a lot of data work. I'm also a field researcher, so I go to factories, floors, and all these places, warehouses. So we realize even in the most advanced countries and also in big companies, they mostly record the data on papers or on Excel sheets at the most. So they still don't have a very clear process. So the digital journey is not so advanced as we think, especially in a conservative industry like food, because it has so many small actors. So a company like Arla, which is a dairy giant based in Denmark, this was one of during my PhD days, Arla was my case company, one of the case companies. So it's the world's largest organic dairy manufacturer. So they have a cooperative, they're a cooperative of 5,000 farmers. So all these farmers are not going to use some advanced IT products. The Arla is forcing them to use very advanced products because they want to have visibility on where the farm is, what conditions the farm is maintaining, and how the animals are treated, for example. So industry is also driving some sort of visibility, but I'm saying as consumers and also researchers, we should also probably make the government make policies to make it more visible. So these are some of the examples of digital interventions. And in the paper, we tried to come up with a small framework. We are researchers, so we love conceptual stuff. So I mean, the framework is supposed to really prompt some food system thinkers from diverse disciplines to come on the same table and use some similar language to solve this big issue of food systems, because food systems can be anything. So that's the stage of project we are at. We are now trying to really understand what's there in the literature and what has been done, what can have potential. And one day we will design it, maybe this year. So probably some of you are already using this technique. It's called causal loop diagrams. So this is some sort of causality we try to establish. This is a very visual representation trying to break down the system in a manner that's digestible for the researchers. When we talk about food system changes and interventions, we have to work with stakeholders. We can't sit in our own ivory tower and we can't just propose solutions. We have to go and bring small farmers or anybody, even the big supermarket chains like Reliance or all those people in the same room, and they have to agree with our definition of food systems. They have to also agree that this solution is feasible. So to do that, causal loop diagrams are very useful, at least for the first brainstorming phase of the project. So we have done several of these causal loop diagrams. My colleagues have done extensively, especially those that are looking into interventions in teenage diets or community kitchens. Many people are working in public procurement, catering, schools, hospitals, prisons. So they have brought all the stakeholders, at least 10 to 15, and they have done these workshops. So what happens is after some time, we can even like make this into equations and we can try and understand system. For example, if there is more use of, if there is more overstocking at retailers, that leads to excess food waste. So there is some causality, right? If there's more traceability, more use of traceability systems, it is reducing something. So we are trying to understand different cause and effect things. So this is one way of thinking about it. And then we are coming to our empirical work. We are closely working with Birmingham wholesale market. So here there are so many traders and they're suffering because of the business problems. Now we are trying to help them because they are responsible for pushing a lot of food, fresh fruit and veg into the market. So our research has many implications. I think basically the main message is that the stakeholders and people from different disciplines have to work together, and especially there is a big gap in food industry based research for public health outcomes. So that's our main message, and thank you very much for listening, and I'll be very happy to get in touch for any queries or anything. My email ID is mentioned here. So thank you very much. Any questions? I'm happy to take. Yeah.
With reference to the big data systems, most of the data systems are closed systems, no license for use beyond a certain structure. The common example being somebody searching for buying some shoe item and you're getting brands using the big data analytics. You're getting ads to purchase.
Yeah.
So in such a scenario where food systems is going to be the tool for the public health benefit, how do we overcome this closed system? Because with closed system, we can't get any accumulation of data to cluster the data and lead into some conclusion.
Yeah, that's quite right. I think they say that if garbage in, garbage out, if there is bad data, you can't make good predictions with it. So I think it's very important that I think some food industry is also very conservative. They have some commercial confidentiality. And sometimes also these IT systems are made in such a way that they have so many lockings. So I feel that there should be some common goal that the supply chain should identify, and there are KPIs to reduce food waste. So maybe they all can come together and agree on something. It's almost like democracy. We have to work for, I think that could be a solution. Yeah.
Regarding these publications you told us, so that nature, what is it?
Yeah. So this is, this is from the content analysis. So we have relevant journals there. So from what we understood, Nature Food is very actively publishing in food systems area. And other one is Journal of Cleaner Production.
Something is missing, you told. So that
Yeah.
where the people should publish, you told, but you did not tell that. What is your expectation? Where people should publish?
So I feel public health researchers are, it's all, people are working in silos, I feel. So I think it's just what we concluded from one of this. I think it's also very widely accepted that food system is a very interdisciplinary topic. If it's only if people are working only from nutrition and diet point of view, they're not really seeing the big picture, right? So it should be more holistic. So my point was to collaborate with food industry. Public health experts need to collaborate with industrial engineers and technologists more to make a real change in the industry. So
At the end, you told me that Zomato and all the supply chains.
Yeah.
So because now you people are digital people, every day new app will come, we are attracted and we are eating. We cannot stop it.
yeah,
But you said no, looking in that angle, whatever you told is, it is not convincing for me. What is the alternative then? Of course, are there many will come into the market.
yeah.
So I don't want to go there. What is
Yeah.
your suggestion?
So I mean, I don't consider myself as a IT person. I'm not at all trained in IT, but all I'm trying to say is, I mean, this is the nature of engineering field. I think we are very problem based researchers. We have a problem, we'll try to implement a solution and try to address it. So I mean, it's by our discipline that this is our expertise to apply a technology and study and solve the problem. So all I'm trying to say is we can't deny that there is a lot of data and AI that's going on. A lot of it is hype, I agree, but we already saw a lot of smartphones and all this. So I'm just trying to say that let's use it for public benefit. Let's not just let the industry use it. Industry is already ahead of us. Industry always uses this and exploits the chance. Yeah, so that's
The home food is good. That also you told.
yes,
Healthy.
yes,
But the psychology of the person,
yeah,
any app or anything will come where it can make us to understand, eat only the home food.
yeah.
That I mean.
Yeah, I think behavioral side people are working on it. I am not the behavioral side of. I'm not a psychology or that scientist. So yeah, digital app for application on the consumer side is not something I am an expert. I mostly deal with the industrial side, but I do agree that I mean, if the consumer is demanding that I want to understand where my food is coming from, and if that can be solved through a digital technology, that will be very good, actually. Yeah, I think I'm a strong advocate for it. And I don't know if people will be convinced by an app. I think app is very powerful to maybe track calories. In UK, in NHS has an app like that, where you can record your calories, like banana 80 calories or something like that. So that naturally gives them some awareness. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So you said about the healthy diet. So government is also saying that people should eat healthy food.
Yeah.
But if you see advertisement about the healthy foods and unhealthy foods, there are several advertisement about the unhealthy foods as well. And
Yes.
government has also made 100% API. So how you look at this?
Yeah, I find it very unfortunate, really, because I think food industry is way too powerful and they can really change. I mean, the big companies, I don't want to name and get sued, but yeah, really, they really push a lot of unhealthy products. But I can give some examples of some success stories from my own research group. They actually, Professor Martin White, he has really challenged the food industry and successfully tried to change some policy actually for soft drinks. So there is a sugar content that the government now imposed, like Coca-Cola and all, they can't exceed that, something like that. So I feel researchers do have a lot of power to change policy. Yeah.
Hello, it was a nice presentation, and
Mm.
I just wanted to say that MIM is also into digital technologies in the sense that we have a German project called NutriAid,
Mhm.
which talks about use of smartphones to improve food systems.
Yeah.
Where we try to improve the access to fruits and vegetables outside local vendors, tap them and try to improve the fruits and vegetable consumption. So this is a project we are trying to see, and we have in general found that there are two issues with such applications case. One is the modularity.
Yeah,
I mean, because all zones are confined. The food vendor zone is confined, supermarket zone is confined. How do you actually link all those applications is something, maybe in Internet of Things. I think that's the future where we try to understand how the applications are actually integrated. And I think there has to be a common protocol that has to be followed for each application so that the applications, for example, Zomato can actually link to Swiggy in a way for the common benefit of the people. So how do we integrate those applications would be the way forward. The situation where modularity is also key because modularity helps in innovation. Small groups have focused thoughts and will be able to do better than large organizations. But keeping modularity and integration is something we will see in the future. I hope that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I agree. Yeah, totally. That's true. Yeah, I think. We are not developing app. We are really trying to apply the existing technology. If actually I can speak about my own work. I'm trying to reach out to a lot of warehouse systems. So warehouse management is a very tricky job. So I wrote to a lot of people and I have some meetings also next week. So we are trying to get use their product and help the small businesses use them and try and see if their inventories levels are managed properly. So we don't develop because that's probably more IT and computer science. We are just using what's existing and trying to,
Software apps there is say that the small groups are problems.
Yeah, I think so. I think small businesses also need to be digitally mature. I believe so. It need not be very fancy. I think IT systems are very expensive, but I think government should incentivize and should let the data be more visible. Yeah.
So that what industries can reach that app on the website, whatever you have, so it will give more opportunity to use that software app and it's like more visibility to everyone. That what's like the status of that food supply. It's not only that if I get the food item, then only get scan and then see what's the status. It's not that you can have the complete overlook of all the like the food supply chain, what's happening. More number of industries, not only for like only the industries who are like industries, whatever app they are using, from that app only they should able to come to know where exactly. It's not like if you make it like more Rudy and more open source, it will give a lot of chance. Even though if I open that app, I should be knowing what are the food supplies which are like storage in the storage or which are in transit kind of thing. So it makes us like it leverages us to expose what is happening with the food supply, where is the surplus, where is the like scarcity, so that we can manage. So if you I think your project is to advocate the like private apps with the smaller, instead of that maybe if we can like focus on like generic free to all, open and see the app, whatever the food supply. Like it's like visible to all. It's not only that if you log in and if you register and if you are like a registered customer or registered like farmer who are registered with the company, they can only see the stock transaction.
Yeah, I think so. It should be designed by somebody with not commercial agenda. Neutral, like government is more neutral. So if they develop it, it'll be more, I think so.
In a country like India, we have a post-rampant malpractice of agriculture production, loss of adulteration. How your digital technologies will help the consumer to supply proper food, safe food?
Okay, so I feel like, I mean, from my like casework in Arla, I realized that if there are compliances, so I also buy some eggs in the supermarket and they come with QR code. If I scan it, I know where the egg is getting produced and how the farmers are treating the chickens and some visibility is there. So it also probably comes from consumer demand also. I think in some countries, people are more like into animal rights and that sort of activism. So they try to demand industry to declare it. And also government also puts these rules and compliances. So I believe that policy is very important. Yeah. Then only the industry will listen. I don't think they care about yeah, consumers.
Even till today, if you see export products, India is well known for spice exports.
Yes.
But maximum spice products are getting rejected due to small microbiological contamination. So
Yeah.
how your digital technology will help in such cases?
So I think there is a big body of literature called traceability systems. So traceability is product level traceability. I think many countries already have these food standard agent. At least in UK, it's called Food Standard Agency. We have FSA, FASSI, something like that. So some people are very like some standard agencies are very strict and some are not. Food Standard Agency in England is very strict. They really force the industry to declare how the contamination levels are because there's so many foodborne problems. Yeah. So I think that should be done. Yeah.
Problem is we don't have microbiological criteria for all category of foods. Even
Okay.
today,
Mhm.
in India, we don't have microbiological criteria for fruits and vegetables. Like dairy and dairy products, milk and milk products,
Yeah.
poultry products. We don't have, till today, we don't have microbiological criteria for fruits and vegetables.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
Issue.
Yeah, I really hope people like yourself will push this. Yeah. And I hope it gets better.
This is one question, final question. It's a good presentation.
Okay.
So you explain very detailed the digital technologies,
Mhm.
how it is used, particularly for the urban
Content.
food system,
Yeah.
and it's going up to planetary health.
Yeah.
Good presentation. So when we are talking about so many digital technologies and interventions using various technologies, including artificial intelligence, all those
Yeah.
things. But ultimately, from the basic, if you look at all it involves the accessibility, availability, accessibility, affordability, and ultimately how the people are consuming.
Yeah.
So are you going to consider all these 3 A's also will be considered when you are making into this kind of interventions?
Yeah.
Even though it is industrialized or industrial, they are going to make it. But ultimately, without
Yeah.
the first A, the second A cannot be. Without second A, the third A will not be.
Yes. Yeah.
So will all these
Yeah.
A's also will be considered.
Yeah, I think when we choose some kind of digital intervention, which means we have to choose a digital platform, mostly already existing, it should be accessible. We will obviously try to consider as good product as possible, which is accessible, affordable. If the system is so expensive, there is no point in. So I think the way we will try to design the research itself will take care of all these things. So when we do these controlled trials, or I don't know which sort of evaluation technique we'll use for testing the interventions, but we'll try to consider all these parameters. Yeah, so that's a part of the puzzle. Yes, for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much once again. I think it's a lot of suggestions, inputs, and that also hopefully it will be useful for implementing in your project.
Yeah.
With this, I thank Dr. Saujanya for coming over to NIN and giving her the lecture. I thank all the participants for participating in this guest lecture presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for listening.
Yeah, presentation is over. Let's meet tomorrow. So, well done.